This is the second video of the flow of cost for a manufacturer. And in this second video, I'm going to concentrate on the issue of overhead and why we estimate overhead. So I did not specify before whether this was estimated or actual, but let's concentrate on just looking at this account by looking at this tab. So this $30 technically is estimated because at any point in time a company doesn't really know what total overhead is. And recall that included in this number is items like electricity, depreciation, indirect materials, indirect labor, and many other items that are not directly traceable to the cost of the item. When we estimate overhead, we debit the WIP, the work in process account, and we credit the overhead account for that same amount. But recall that this is an estimated or applied overhead amount. Okay, we do this for many reasons. One is we need timely information. As soon as I finish one of these products, I want to know how much overhead is applied to it so that I can figure out how much to sell it for. So from a business perspective, I want to estimate overhead as soon as possible, even though the actual cost, which might be, like I said earlier, electricity, depreciation, rent, you name it, all the other things related to the factory, I might not find out what these total costs are until after the fact. So, think about electricity. You don't get the electricity bill until after the month end. Well, if I have a product that's done, I have to estimate how much overhead ahead of time. So let me just give some numbers. Let's say that after the fact we find out that electricity was $6, depreciation on the machinery was $7, and the rent was $20, and that this represents all the actual overhead items. By the way, just think about this. If this is the rent for $6, I am debiting overhead, and I'm probably crediting cash or some other account. This here represented depreciation, so I'm debiting overhead and I'm crediting accumulated depreciation, right? Also with the rent, I'm debiting overhead and crediting cash or accounts payable, whatever the case may be, or prepaid rent. So this represents a varied group of accounts. If you notice, when I add these up, these add up to $33. I had estimated 30. So we would say that the balance in this account is a debit balance because there's more on the debit balance than on the credit. And this represents an under application of overhead, or in other words, an underestimation of overhead. But if I would have known it was going to be $33, obviously I would have done 33, but you don't know that ahead of time. So how do you get rid of this balance? This is a temporary account. Once you have your balance, you will do the opposite to get rid of that $3 at the end of a period and transfer that into cost of goods sold. So if I am crediting overhead, then I am debiting overhead. And by the way, the opposite is true if you overestimate or overapplied. This is an example of under application. The opposite is true for an example of over application. And this is the case. This is what you would do in case the difference is small. If you determine that this difference is large, then that needs to be spread out over 3 accounts. Not just cost of goods sold, but you would have to put some in finished goods and possibly some into WIP as well. In other words, if you determine that this $3 error is small, just throw the whole thing to cost of goods sold. But if you determine that this is large in nature, part of it will have to go as a debit to cost of goods sold, part of it finished goods, and part of it WIP, given that this mistake would be spread out throughout all the 3 accounts. So when it's large, it needs to be distributed to all 3 accounts.